Have you ever heard of a woman so powerful she could order the death of anyone who crossed her, yet so scandalous that her name became a synonym for depravity? In the heart of the mighty Roman Empire, while legions conquered distant lands and emperors ruled as gods, the true power in the palace wasn't a man with a sword, but a teenage girl with an insatiable appetite. This is the story of Valeria Messalina, the third wife of Emperor Claudius. She was an empress, a mother to a future emperor, and, if the ancient historians are to be believed, the most sexually voracious woman in Roman history. Her story is a shocking tale of power, lust, and betrayal that culminates in one of the most audacious acts ever committed by a Roman royal. Forget what you think you know about Roman scandals, Messalina wrote the book. Stay with us as we uncover the dark and sordid secrets of Rome's most infamous empress. Our story begins not with scandal, but with ambition. Valeria Messalina was born into the heart of Roman aristocracy around 25 AD. She was a member of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the most powerful family in the world, with blood ties to the legendary Emperor Augustus himself. From a young age, she would have understood that in Rome, marriage wasn't about love, it was about power. And Messalina hit the jackpot. Around the year 38 AD, when she was likely just a teenager, she was married off to a man twice her age, Tiberius Claudius Nero Germanicus. At the time, Claudius was seen as the family joke. He was afflicted with a limp, a slight deafness, and a stammer, leading many, including his own family, to believe he was mentally deficient. He was kept out of the public eye, a forgotten man in the imperial palace. But Messalina, or perhaps her family, saw potential where others saw a fool. Their fortunes changed dramatically just 3 years later. In 41 AD, the psychopathic Emperor Caligula was assassinated. In the ensuing chaos, the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite bodyguards, stumbled upon Claudius hiding behind a curtain, trembling in fear. In a bizarre twist of fate, they proclaimed him the new emperor of Rome. Suddenly, the teenage Messalina was no longer the wife of the imperial idiot, she was the empress of the most powerful empire on earth. At just 16 years old, she was given a level of influence that most people could only dream of, and she was determined to use every bit of it. With her husband Claudius now on the throne, Messalina quickly proved she was far more than just a pretty face. While Claudius was often seen as indecisive and easily manipulated, Messalina was ruthless and cunning. She understood that her position, and that of her children, Britannicus and Octavia, was precarious. She existed in a viper's nest of political rivals, all vying for the emperor's ear and a slice of his power. Messalina wasted no time in consolidating her authority. She allied herself with the powerful freedmen of the imperial court, men like Narcissus and Pallas, who effectively ran the empire's bureaucracy. Together, they formed an unshakable inner circle around the emperor. Anyone who threatened their position was dealt with swiftly and brutally. One of her first victims was Julia Livilla, Caligula's own sister. Messalina, allegedly jealous of Julia's beauty and her close relationship with Claudius, accused her of adultery with the famous philosopher Seneca the Younger. The charge was almost certainly fabricated, but it worked. Julia was exiled and later starved to death on Messalina's orders. Seneca himself was also exiled to the island of Corsica, only to be recalled years later after Messalina's death. This was Messalina's signature move, using accusations of treason or moral corruption to eliminate her enemies and seize their wealth, making herself both more powerful and richer in the process. While Messalina was a formidable political operator by day, it was her alleged activities by night that truly cemented her infamous reputation. The ancient sources, particularly the historians Tacitus and Suetonius, and the poet Juvenal, paint a picture of an empress with an uncontrollable libido. According to them, the imperial palace was not enough to contain her desires. The whispers started small. Rumors of affairs with senators, knights, and even actors began to circulate through the city. These were dangerous games to play. For a Roman woman, especially an empress, the wife of the Pontifex Maximus or chief priest, chastity was meant to be her defining virtue. But Messalina, it was said, cared little for such conventions. The historian Cassius Dio writes that she would force noblewomen to commit adultery with her in the palace, often in front of their own husbands, to make them complicit in her crimes. He claims that those who refused were often executed on false charges. She allegedly sold imperial honors and positions for sexual favors, turning the administration of the empire into an extension of her own personal desires. While these stories are sensational, they point to a growing perception in Rome that the empress was dangerously out of control, her behavior a stain on the honor of the imperial family. Of all the stories told about Messalina, one stands out as the most shocking and infamous. It comes to us from the historian Pliny the Elder. According to his account, Messalina became so brazen in her promiscuity that she decided to enter into a direct competition with Rome's most famous prostitute, a woman named Scylla. The challenge was simple and obscene: who could sleep with the most men in a single 24-hour period. The contest was allegedly held in a brothel, with the Empress of Rome herself competing under a false name. For a full day and night, Messalina reportedly serviced man after man, driven by what Pliny calls a lust for the throne of promiscuity. As dawn broke, her competitor, exhausted, gave up. But Messalina, undeterred, continued on. By the end of the contest, Pliny claims she had been with a staggering 25 partners, emerging as the undisputed champion. The story is almost too wild to be believed. Was it a factual account, or a piece of vicious propaganda designed to destroy her reputation? We may never know for sure, but the very fact that a respected historian like Pliny recorded it shows just how debauched Messalina's reputation had become. The legends of Messalina's secret life don't end there. The poet Juvenal, in his famous satires, adds another layer to her sordid tale. He claims that Messalina lived a complete double life. Every night, after her husband, Emperor Claudius, had fallen asleep, the empress would disguise herself. She would put on a cheap wig, don the clothes of a commoner, and sneak out of the palace. Her destination: the Suburra, Rome's gritty, red-light district. There, under the pseudonym Lysiska, or Wolf Girl, she would allegedly work a shift in a common brothel. Juvenal paints a vivid picture of her in her own private cell, exposing herself to passers-by and welcoming any man who could pay the price. He writes that she would be the last to leave the brothel in the morning, long after the other girls had gone home, still burning with the heat of her desire. She would then return to the imperial palace, physically exhausted but, as Juvenal claims, sexually unsatisfied, bringing the grime and smell of the brothel back with her to the emperor's bed. This image of the empress as a secret prostitute became the defining element of her legacy, a symbol of the ultimate corruption and moral decay at the very top of Roman society. Messalina's appetites weren't just sexual, they were also for power and wealth. She was notoriously greedy and used her position to accumulate a vast personal fortune. One of her most famous victims was Valerius Asiaticus, an incredibly wealthy and influential former consul. Asiaticus owned the spectacular gardens of Lucullus, one of the most beautiful and desirable properties in all of Rome, and Messalina wanted them for herself. Working with one of her allies, she concocted a plot. She had Asiaticus accused of treason, claiming he was plotting to turn the legions in Germania against Claudius. The charges were flimsy, but in the paranoid atmosphere of the imperial court, they were enough. Claudius, ever suggestible, was convinced of his guilt. Asiaticus was denied a public trial. Instead, he was tried in private in the emperor's chambers, with Messalina looking on. He defended himself eloquently, nearly moving Claudius to acquit him. But Messalina, seeing the tide turning, allegedly left the room in tears, whispering to her ally to ensure the death sentence was carried out. Asiaticus was forced to take his own life. Shortly after, Messalina took possession of his magnificent gardens. This was how she operated, a cold, calculating predator who took whatever she wanted, eliminating anyone who stood in her way. For years, Messalina's reckless behavior went unchecked. Her husband, Claudius, seemed either blissfully ignorant or simply unwilling to confront his powerful wife. But Messalina was about to make a fatal misstep. She fell madly in love. The object of her affection was Gaius Silius, a handsome, charismatic, and ambitious senator who was widely regarded as one of the most desirable men in Rome. What began as a passionate affair soon escalated into something far more dangerous. Messalina was not content with Silius being just another one of her secret lovers. She became obsessed with him, showering him with wealth and honors stripped from others. She forced him to divorce his own well-respected wife, Junia Silana, so she could have him all to herself. Their affair was no secret, they appeared together in public, and Messalina would openly visit his home, which she had decorated with treasures from the Imperial palace. She had completely abandoned any pretense of discretion. In her mind, she was the empress, and she was above the law. But by elevating Silius so publicly, she was creating a rival to her own husband, an act that could only be interpreted as treason. In the year 48 AD, Messalina took her audacity to a level that stunned even the jaded Roman elite. While Emperor Claudius was away from the city, officiating a religious ceremony in the port of Ostia, Messalina decided to marry her lover, Gaius Silius. This wasn't a secret ceremony. It was a full, public wedding, complete with a signed marriage contract and witnesses. She, the wife of the living emperor, was committing bigamy in the most public way imaginable. Why would she do something so unbelievably reckless? Historians have debated this for centuries. Was it simply the act of a woman blinded by love and arrogance? Or was it the first step in a much darker plot? Many believe that Messalina and Silius were planning to overthrow the aging Claudius. Their plan, it is thought, was to assassinate him and place Silius on the throne as the new emperor, with Messalina ruling by his side. They would then adopt her son, Britannicus, as their heir, securing the dynasty. By marrying Silius, she was making a public declaration of her intentions. It was a gamble for the ultimate prize, absolute control of the Roman Empire. But it was a gamble that would backfire spectacularly. The news of the wedding traveled quickly to Ostia. At first, Claudius refused to believe it. But he was soon convinced by his most trusted freedman, Narcissus, who saw the coup as a direct threat to his own position. Realizing the extreme danger he was in, Claudius was seized by a rare fit of decisiveness and fury. He rushed back to Rome. Panic erupted among the conspirators. Messalina and Silius were celebrating their union with a lavish party when they received word that the emperor was coming. The partygoers scattered. Silius went to the forum to try and maintain a sense of normalcy, while Messalina fled to the gardens of Lucullus, the very gardens she had stolen from Valerius Asiaticus. Her fate was sealed. Narcissus, taking command of the situation, had Silius and all the other key members of their circle arrested and executed without delay. Messalina was captured and held in the gardens. She tried to appeal to Claudius, sending her children to beg for her life, hoping the emperor's affection for them might soften his resolve. For a moment, it seemed like it might work. Claudius wavered, agreeing to hear her side of the story the next day. But Narcissus knew he couldn't let that happen. Fearing Messalina would win her husband back, he took matters into his own hands. He sent a group of soldiers to the gardens with one simple order: execute the empress immediately. They found her on the floor with her mother, who was urging her to take her own life with dignity. But Messalina hesitated, and the soldiers ran her through with a sword. So ended the reign of Empress Valeria Messalina. She was just 23 years old. In the aftermath, the Senate ordered a damnatio memoriae, attempting to erase her from history by destroying her statues and removing her name from public inscriptions. But they failed. Her story was too shocking, too scandalous to be forgotten. But was she truly the depraved monster the ancient writers portrayed? Or was she a brilliant and ambitious woman in a man's world, destroyed by a smear campaign written by her political enemies? The truth is likely somewhere in between. The men who wrote her history had every reason to portray a powerful woman as a sexual deviant, a common tactic used to discredit female rulers. Yet, her actions, particularly the public marriage to Silius, suggest a woman of extreme recklessness and ambition. What do you think? Was Messalina a victim of history, or did she get what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this dive into Roman scandal fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more stories from the dark side of history, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.